Fellow Falcoholics, what is up? Thank you for your patience. Welcome to our Day 5 Falcons training camp recap here on the Falcoholic Live. I'm your host, Kevin Knight, joined by my very busy co-host, Adnan Ikic. He is cranking out those recap posts, getting them ready for the boss man himself to proofread so you guys can get your hands on them as soon as possible. We appreciate all of his diligent work today as we are bringing you this recap. Welcome in, Adnan Ikic at Say Which Way, of course. Adnan, how we doing?
Man, I'm running around, Kevin. Like I am running around. It was a very busy morning. So they gave us Raheem Morris before practice started this morning, and then they gave us Arthur Blank after.
Yeah.
So Raheem Morris's press conference starts at 9 a.m. sharp. And there was, a lot of traffic, so you had to leave at like 8. Arthur Blank's press conference was scheduled for 12:30, so that means staying after an extra hour after practice. Then by the time Mr. Blank's press conference finished, and by the time I put up my, my tweet news and notes Twitter thread, I realized that I forgot my hat when I got to my car. So then I had to walk all the way back
Oh no.
and then, get home, just enough time to eat, shower, write up those news and notes. And yeah, I literally just got that article done a
Yep.
couple of minutes ago, which
Yeah.
is, hence the wait.
Yes. No, it's all good. Appreciate everyone joining us today. Like Adnan said, action-packed day of practice. First day in pads. First day where we got some real one-on-one opportunities to look at. So lots of exciting stuff to talk about today. Thanks for joining us, everyone. Yeah, before we dive all the way in, real quick, want to bring you a word from our sponsor once again, Bet Online. Folks, Bet Online is the world's most trusted betting platform and your number one source for everything online sports betting. And right now, you can receive a 50% free bet of up to $250 on your first deposit to bet on anything from the Olympics, which are in full swing now. We've got baseball, maybe not the Braves. Seems like maybe that's not the year for that, but they've also got other, you can bet on other teams. You can hate bet on the Braves, whatever you want. Formula One racing, they've got it all on Bet Online, and they've got every stat, every matchup, and even live odds and spreads while the games are being played. And when the game's over, you can head on over to our online casino and get in on a game of blackjack or poker, or unwind with one of our over 150 online slots games. So what are you waiting for, folks? Head to that website today to get in on the action and make sure to use our promo code BELIEVE. That's BLEAV for your 50% free bet credit on your first deposit up to $250. Bet online, the game starts here. All right. Don, a lot to get to today. I have not seen your notes because, like you said, you were cranking them out right before we got started. So you're gonna have to lead the way while I read. And yeah, I mean, there's a lot. I saw your tweets, so I've got that at least. But yeah, curious what do you want to start with today? It seems like there's plenty to talk about.
Yeah, I know today was the first day of pads. Raheem Morris. Now it was a question of whether it was going to be today or tomorrow because Darnell Mooney talked on. I'm getting my days mixed up. Talked on Sunday. Yeah, Monday was the day off. Normally during Arthur Smith's stage last year,
Yeah.
Sundays were the days off. Darnell Mooney mentioned how it might be Wednesday before the pads came on. Raheem Morris confirmed before practice started it would be today. And yeah, they went out there. He mentioned how excited the offensive and defensive lines were, as as you'd expect. Yeah, the big story today is that we got less dominance from the offense. So the offense definitely still had their moments, but it wasn't what we saw the first 2 days of action. I'm not counting day 4 or day 1. Days 2 and 3 were like the actual action-packed training camp days so far, but on those days, it was just, other than the first team defense getting, the better of Michael Penix in the second year high school practice, it was just for the most part the offense just dominating. And today it just felt like an even split. Like I don't even think I can tell you who outright sort of won between the offense and the defense. It was just that it was just that down the middle. Um, the big star for me today was Bijan Robinson. As you know, you can't really evaluate the run game. Um, until pads come on, and Bijan just looked so good. Like, you can tell that he was a top 10 draft pick for a reason. It didn't matter. I'm not going to say it didn't matter what the offensive line was doing for him, but even when the offensive line sort of lost or couldn't get the push, it just looked like Bijan was still sort of making, even something minimal out of nothing. And then when he was getting a hole, and he was getting some nice holes today, he just utilized them. He had a really nice misdirection run where he, burst up for 8 yards. There was a play where Charlie Warner sprang him for, I think it looked like a 15-yard gain that had even Dwayne Ledford just super excited. Um, Bijan Robinson is going to have such a special season this year, and I think today was the first day when you really, saw what's going to be on display. Now, I'm not saying he went out there and had, a full field run. There weren't any of those today, but it just felt like every time he got the ball in his hands, he was going to make something happen, and very slippery, very physical. Bijan Robinson, he looks like he's gonna he's gonna continue right where he left off from last year. Um, he had 7 runs to Tyler Algier's 4. Tyler Algier is still a factor. He had a couple of nice runs as well. It wasn't, Bijan esque, but Tyler Algier is definitely not going to go away when it comes to this offense. I know that some people, especially in the fantasy football realm, have this expectation that Bijan's going to get these Derrick Henry esque number of looks, targets, carries, and I mean he may well be a bell cow, but there's definitely a plan for Tyler Algier, and that's evidenced by the fact that Tyler Algier has run with only Kirk Cousins in the first team in both walkthroughs and 11 on 11 so far in training camp. When it's Michael Penix out there, it's Jace McClellan, Avery Williams, Carlos Washington who are getting those carries. It's Jace McClellan is leading the way. I'd say right now he's my favorite for that RB3 job. But Tyler Algier is going to have his role, and Zach Robinson said, I quote, he's going to have a great role in this offense in the post practice press conference.
Yeah, I'm really excited to see how they obviously divvy up carries there. We know that that's a touchy topic for fantasy, right? Is Bijan going to get the volume to be an RB1, to be potentially a top 3 fantasy player, because that's how people are sort of drafting him, right? Like, you're drafting him in the top 5 in non-superflex redraft, like, without question, pretty much. So, yeah, I mean that's definitely a question on everyone's minds. I still think we're probably going to see Bijan take like 70% of the snap share, with Algier being more of like a, you know, rotational guy. But again, I think Algier, like, I think they really value what Algier can bring if Bijan has to mix time, or if they really just want it late in games, just salt away a lead. Algier's the perfect back for that. We've talked about that, and we haven't really gotten to see that very much, right? Because the Falcons just haven't really been leading a lot late in games to where they could salt away anything. But I think it's underrated that the Algier as that bruiser may end up taking like carries late, as the team sort of just crushes the opponent, grinds them down, burns clock, that sort of thing. And I think he does have an important role too, as like if Bijan does have to miss any time, like they got Algier who can step in, probably run the same plays, not necessarily going to provide the same production or like, dynamic ability as Bijan, but can do the same stuff. We know he's a really good pass protector. He's got soft hands, again, not as dynamic, but definitely can do the same stuff. So that is exciting. And obviously everyone is pretty pumped to hear good things about Bijan pretty much universally, I think. But I know there's a lot of panicking going on about the defense being so bad over those first couple days, and I think we were trying to kind of pump the brakes and be like, okay, maybe relax a little bit. It sounds like the defense kind of had a bounce back day today. So curious how the defense was looking now that contact was back on the menu.
Yeah, they definitely did. I mean, the defense, you can tell that they've been waiting to be more physical. It's sort of, you know, like you have a dog on a leash back before the pads came on, and you can't, you really want, the dog really wants to sort of attack, but he's not allowed. And I mean, that's just in general, right? When it comes to any defense where everyone's in shorts, everyone has to sort of let up, especially the guys on the inside where, those defensive linemen, those edge guys, they can't really be as physical, attacking the O lineman because you don't want anyone getting hurt. And I mean, today the defense looked aggressive today, but it went both ways. The offensive line also looked like they could not wait to get those pads on. They were also very aggressive, but overall, very good bounce back day when it comes to the passing offense. That's where, you can sort of look at the completion percentage, and I track quarterback completions throughout camp at this point. And if you look at the completion percentage, adjust that number, you would probably say, "Oh, Kirk Cousins went 8 for 11. Oh, Michael Penix went 6 for 9." It was another dominant day for the passing offense, but I always implore you, and I always try to give context to what those numbers are because I still remember the trap that some of the other media members were setting with Desmond Ritter last year during camp, where it was, "Oh, Desmond Ritter went 7 for 8 today. Desmond Ritter went 6 for 7," but all of those passes were screen passes and short slants and just things that I remember one day when he went 7 for 7, and I literally said to myself, I could have gone 7 for 7 throwing some of these passes that Ritter was throwing. Um, because out of those 8 passes for Kirk Cousins, not a single one of them went 10 plus yards beyond the line of scrimmage in the air. Now, there was one pass to Kyle Pitts where Kyle Pitts caught it and he ran past the 10-yard mark. But outside of that, all of those passes were sort of dink and dunks. And you know, it says a lot that Charlie Warner was the leading receiver today from Kirk Cousins with 3 receptions because Charlie Warner is not, no disrespect to Charlie Warner. He's not the first read in this offense. He's not the second read either. He's not the third read either. Like there were plays where the secondary, was playing so well on that play that Kirk Cousins just had to dump it down to Charlie Warner as his sort of safety valve. And I think Charlie Warner is gonna, might have that role this season as that sort of check down safety valve. And it says a lot that he was the leading receiver in that role today because the secondary was doing a pretty good job. They were doing a great job of keeping everything in front of them. Cousins did have a miss. He had Ray McLeod open on a pass that would have gone 20 plus yards, but he completely missed him on one. And then on another, the play of the day, so to speak, um, the first team offense was running against the second team offense in 11s for the first session of 11 on 11, as is normal. And, in the later on session, it was first team versus first team, as we've become accustomed to. On the first play of first team versus first team, Kirk Cousins throws a pass intended for Darnell Mooney, and it ends up going right into the waiting arms of Jesse Bates, who, read the coverage. I don't know. It might have been a miscommunication. I don't know what the exact route was, but, the AJC's D-Led, shout out to the
That's
Orlando
D-Led.
Ledbetter.
Yeah.
Yeah, D-Led, he mentioned to Arthur Blank in the post-practice press conference about him being a Hall of Famer. So congratulations to him on that. Yeah, I'll get to that in a second. But yeah, he said that Mooney went to the video board, and there's a video board which shows the replays now. And upon looking at the play, Mooney went over to Cousins and said it was his fault. He took responsibility for it, but still, great play by Jesse Bates. It was a pick. It would have been a pick that, might have gone some yards the other way, but overall, it wasn't the sharpest day for Kirk Cousins, and not because of anything, that was Cousins' fault. Other than that pass that was a miss to McLeod, but it's just the secondary was doing such a good job of taking away his reads for the most part today. And the other thing that sort of hurt Cousins was in a red zone drill, Kyle Pitts had a drop that it's one that he should not have dropped, and it's one that he'll probably tell you he needs to haul in. It was over the middle. It was in traffic. The ball did hit him in the hands, however, and it was Dane Cruikshank the safety signing. I think he played in Seattle previously. He applied some pressure, and I'll give him credit for that pass defense. Even though Pitts really should have had it, so it should have been a touchdown. It should have been 9 for 11 for Cousins. But still, either way, that pass also went less than 10 yards. It was 8 completions, but a lot of dink and dunks.
Yeah. No, that makes sense. And maybe there was some emphasis today on doing short passing and practicing that, especially with the
Absolutely,
contact, that sort of
absolutely.
thing. Like, I don't think I know you're not necessarily saying like, oh, this offense is a bunch of cowards. No, it's not like that. It's just,
No, not at all, not at all.
yeah,
But
yeah.
I'm also giving credit to the secondary
Hmm.
because
Hmm.
there were some plays where Kirk Cousins, he had the ball for 3 or 4 beats, and there was just nothing that was sort of developing that was open. And I mean, Cousins, instead of throwing the ball in harm's way, being the veteran that he is, checks it down and he takes what the defense is giving him. But it was a good day. I was very, very happy with what I saw from the secondary, despite the high completion percentage allowed.
Yeah. No, I think that makes sense, and it's cool to. I mean, it's nice to see the defense bounce back. I know people were getting a little bit worried, like, oh, is this like, is it just that this is a Hall of Fame offense or something, or is the defense really in trouble? And I think while I know I'm expecting some regression from the defense. I imagine you probably are too. I don't think they're gonna be terrible by any stretch. Like, I don't think this is gonna be a bottom five level defense. I do think that the coaching staff and the level of talent they have on the interior, the defensive line at linebacker and Jesse Bates back there. Like, I think this is probably going to be like an 18 to 22 ish ranked defense, like overall. I think that's all they need, like, especially if they can get in the teens. Like, I think that's probably all they need to be a 10-11 win team that can scare some people in the playoffs. So that this tracks with what I was expecting. I think you and I both thought, pads come on, defense is going to bounce back. And I think again the defense is learning a newer scheme than the offense. Like, the offense has played some version of a Shanahan offense for what feels like forever. Obviously, this is a newer one, but for Kirk Cousins in particular, like, this is a very, very familiar offense, not something that he's unaccustomed to. The offense, I think, in this scenario, especially Cousins, didn't have necessarily the same distance to go as the defense learning what amounts to a new scheme. I mean, like we said, it is more similar to Dean P's defense than last year's defense, but not really the same. I mean, the Fangio style defense that it seems like they're going to run here is relatively new, especially in terms of the coverage. And there's a lot of rules and pattern matching that has to get sort of drilled down, and it may take time for this scheme to come together. And that may be part of it too, that they're just sort of gelling back there. But I mean, like you said, it sounds like Jesse Bates had a good performance. I saw some good one-on-one reps from some of the cornerbacks. We saw, I think, Dane Cruikshank, who I do think has a pretty good chance to make the roster as that fourth safety, had a good play. Antonio Hamilton looked like he had a pick against Chris Blair in one-on-ones. That's always nice. I think Antonio Hamilton, I think if Mike Hughes falters, we're going to see Antonio Hamilton quick. If Clark Phillips or Mike Hughes falter at all, Antonio Hamilton's right there to take over that starting job, and we'll see, if he does end up coming correct. But definitely like what I'm hearing in terms of the defense bouncing back. You don't want the offense to just totally dominate, because then it really does start to raise questions about the quality of the defense. I think it's good to have the defense fight back, and I know we were talking about that on the last show. Like, okay, we both sort of thought that we were going to see the defense bounce back, and we were expecting them to do so. So I'm glad that they did. Continuing sort of on the defense, I know you had some notes about the linebacker rotation. Definitely, there's four guys that are sort of dominating the top of the rotation, but it sounds like in terms of linebacker two, it's still kind of an even split between Anderson and Nate Landman, and Anderson was back sort of on top today with pads on for the first day.
Yeah, no, pads came on, and I mean, so far we've had Nate Landman having a very slight edge. I mean, like the slightest of slightest edges, but he was still the first person out there next to Caden Ellis with the ones. Today it was flipped. Today it was Troy Anderson who was out there running with the ones, and we got more Nate Landman running with the second team defense next to JD Bertrand, who I would say Bertrand right now is the heavy favorite to win that fourth interior linebacker role. I think the team really likes what Bertrand sort of brings to the table. Obviously, he was what, a fifth round pick this year. So yeah, he's probably safe to make the 53 man roster. But yeah, it was still a rotation. But this is one of those type of competitions where by the end of training camp, we still won't know anything. Um, it's a complete toss up right now. I have no idea who's going to win this. It looks like they're giving both of them a fair amount of looks on both ends. This feels like one of those competitions where we're not going to figure it out until we get deep into preseason. They're probably both going to play, at least a couple of those preseason games. And even when we go into the regular season, whoever wins it, the other player is still going to get a decent and fair amount of like snaps in this defense. And it's, Raheem Morris said it's an exciting problem to have the other day at second year high school and asked about it. And it is. It's a good problem. Too much depth is not a bad problem, especially for a team that has lacked depth at every single defensive position for the most part for years and years. Um, but yeah, right now it's the pendulum may have shifted a little bit toward Troy Anderson. Nate Landman still had a strong day today. He had outside of the interception by Jesse Bates, I think he may have had the play of the day on defense. It was a screen pass from Michael Penix to Rondale Moore, and Nate Landman read the play the entire way, and he absolutely snuffed it out. Tackled Rondale Moore for looked like a loss of two on the play, and I mean it was a nice little open field tackle. Everyone got hyped. The very next play, he goes out and stuffs James Washington on a run. So I mean, Nate Landman, still had a solid day. Troy Anderson had a solid day, helping stop the run a little bit. Um, so it's a fun competition, and I would say right now this is the only spot where I'm looking at it, and I'm like, yeah, like that's one where I have no clue what's gonna happen.
Yeah, I mean, it seems like the answer right now is that they're both going to play like a lot, and all three might play, a decent amount depending on what happens, right? How things shake out. I think that there's a non-zero chance that Caden Ellis is like one of the best like edge rushers the team has, so that could factor in maybe more than expected as well. We'll see. And in that case, you're probably going to see Anderson and Landman back there. I know Landman was saying that he's going to be wearing the green dot, which definitely suggests that he's going to be on the field most of the time. But I'm
Yeah.
curious how they divvy it up, and um,
What Landman said is when he's out there, he's gonna have the responsibilities of communication, and when it's Caden with Troy Anderson, when Landman isn't out there, it's gonna be Caden Ellis having the communicational responsibilities. So, that's directly from Landman as of Sunday.
yeah, yep. So that'll be interesting to see, but it definitely I think shows that maybe the easiest answer is that they're just both going to play. That's kind of a cop out for us. Like we don't have to make any grand predictions, but they're probably both going to play a lot, and that's a good problem to have. So, yeah, I'm excited to hear about that. I think we need to talk about Kyle Pitts, non, because the people want to know. They've seen the highlights. How is Kyle Pitts today?
Yeah, other than the drop that I mentioned, and again, it wasn't the most straightforward. It wasn't one of those where, he's all alone, nobody's around him, and it just like sort of hits him in the chest and goes bounce. It was still you know, it wasn't a straightforward catch to make, but it's one you expect Kyle Pitts to make. Other than that play, Kyle Pitts was great today. We finally had one-on-ones, which is what I've been waiting for because it's the one thing they let us film that's actually exciting. So it was really cool. Once again, being able to see some of those one-on-ones. I think I put two or three of them on my Twitter page. Um, yeah, Pitts ran against DeMarco Hellams 3 times, and he won that one-on-one battle all 3 times, and it wasn't like Hellams was being a slouch either. Like, Hellams had good coverage on each of those plays, but Kyle Pitts just it was just one of those where it's the old saying as it goes, good offense beats good defense, and Kyle Pitts just had great offense. Each of those times, Zach Robinson noted it in the post-practice press conference, singling Kyle Pitts out as being so good in those one-on-ones. Pitts had 2 catches, in 11 on 11s. He was the joint second leading receiver after Charlie Warner. He had the longest completion from Kirk Cousins, and that was that uh, catch and run, which went for over 10 yards that I mentioned earlier. He had another play, another reception. His second reception was it was interesting because it was on a play where it sort of broke down a little bit, and this is one of those plays where I mentioned where Cousins had 3 or 4 beats. Nothing was open, and he checks it down to Kyle Pitts. It wasn't many yards. It was like 5 or 6 yards, but it's still one of those where you sort of note it because Pitts was not the primary or secondary read, I would say, on that play. He was that option where Cousins looked to him to sort of bail him out, a little bit down the field. So, you know, Pitts ends up making that catch. Overall, a really strong day for Kyle Pitts. Robinson talked also in the press conference about wanting and desiring Pitts, and this is something that Kyle Pitts desires too. We talked to him in the press conference a few days ago about it, about being a more complete tight end. Apparently, Pitts has been working a lot on his blocking. He's been doing a lot of studying. Robinson said he's making a lot of strides toward being a more versatile option and more complete tight end who's also really good at run blocking. So maybe we get it this year where I know fantasy football players don't want to hear it, but there will be some more plays where Kyle Pitts is run blocking that sort of tracks with that Los Angeles philosophy of never taking your players off the field. And it is, very easy to see that that is sort of one of the main reasons why Robinson is emphasizing Pitts being such a good run blocker, and he also singled Drake London out as being such a good run blocker, a weapon. I'm quoting a weapon in the run game. So, yeah, everything that we've seen from the Rams thus far, I think we will see with the Falcons. Another thing that I was seeing a lot of today was a lot of pre-snap motion, a lot of pre-snap motion, a lot of that motion that we've seen with Robert Woods a few years ago and Puka Nacua last year, where the wide receiver is coming around the end, and you just, as a defender, don't know if it's going to be a handoff or an end around, given the timing of when the wide receiver is going in motion. There was some of that today as well. So it's going to be a Los Angeles Rams like type offense that we will see this year, and everything we've seen and heard so far at training camp sort of gives credence to that philosophy and that hypothesis that yeah it's going to look a lot like what we've seen from the Matthew Stafford and Sean McVay Rams from the past few years.
Yeah, it certainly seems that way. And I mean, I'm excited to see it. Obviously, we've talked about it to death this offseason that just you take all these star players and you just continue to rotate them on and off the field, and like it's just like I don't we just didn't understand the emphasis on taking guys like Kyle Pitts with premium picks, and just not featuring them, not being able to figure out how to feature them. It's like, well, if you take a guy 4th overall, you think that you'd have a plan to use him, and they just didn't really. It seemed like under Arthur Smith, they just couldn't really figure out how to get Kyle Pitts great opportunities. Obviously, his injury and the rehab, it stretched into last year, and Pitts wasn't necessarily 100% for most of the season, so that had something to do with it, I'm sure. But hopefully now with the competent quarterback play and a new offense that's committed heavily to featuring him, that we will see that Kyle Pitts breakout season that we've been sort of, he broke out as a rookie, let's be clear, but like that sort of follow-up season that I think people were just expecting that never really came, hoping that we will see that now, because we need it, right? I think Pitt's turning into that top weapon to complement Drake London, and then Bijan Robinson being there in the run game. That's sort of what will take this offense to the next level, that they just haven't had it since Arthur Smith got here. So hopefully now they will have it. They will be able to make this work because I still have lots of faith in Pitts. He's super young still. He's younger than Michael Penix, so um, I'm excited to see how that develops, and obviously big fan of Pitts still. I never left the party. I've stayed on the bandwagon the whole time. I hope that the bandwagon gets going even stronger this year. But speaking of Penix, I just mentioned. What did you think about Penix's performance today? I know he's been a little more up and down than Kirk Cousins, but that's not terribly surprising for a rookie quarterback. So
Yeah, it was, you know, similar with similar with Kirk Cousins. Really good completion percentage, but when you sort of look deeper into it, not not amazing. When you look at the context of those completions, just like Cousins, five of his six completions were of the short variety. Uh, I think he had two plays where I mentioned it in the notes, which I know they haven't been published yet, but they will be pretty soon. He had two plays. One was a diving catch by Charlie, or not Charlie Warner. It was Ross Dwelly. I got my former San Francisco tight ends mixed up. One was a diving catch by Ross Dwelly. It looked like on a little flat route to the right. The other was a great catch by Kaderil Hodge on a pass which wasn't the most accurate. Um, and then he had two screen passes, one really short pass to Jace McClellan, and five of those six. It was really sort of unimpressive completions. His most impressive plays were one, uh, maybe I think it was his last or second to last pass. It was a 20-yard strike to Kaderil Hodge, who uh, it looked like he ran a little bit of a deep in route where he looked like he was going to go on a nine route, and then he like cuts in. And that pass was just it was a standard pass. You see it, it's a standard pass. It shouldn't be anything to really write home about, but I don't know. I also talked about it in my notes. It was such the ball looks so different coming out of Penix's arms on some of those deeper plays where he's really pushing the ball. Like you can tell that he has one of the most talented arms maybe in the entire NFL right now. And that's just I just like saw the play and I'm like, yeah, this is a standard, and it was a 20-yard catch, like, don't get me wrong. But it was one of those where you just see the ball, you just see the zip on the ball, and you're like, yeah, this is a this is a real NFL arm that this guy has. The other play that was maybe his best throw, it was another drop. He's been plagued a lot by these drops. It was Stagner, uh, Austin Stagner, undrafted rookie tight end. He ran an out route in the end zone, and it was a great pass by Michael Penix. It was one of those sort of timing routes where, Penix threw the ball to him before he got all the way before he got all the way into his route, because otherwise the play would not have worked. And Stagner just turned his head late. It hit him right in the numbers. He dropped it. Second end zone drop for Penix by a tight end. The first one being John Fitzpatrick uh, at second year high school. Overall, I think there's been I want to say at least five or six drops on good Michael Penix passes in training camp thus far. But with Penix also, it was another strong performance by the secondary, by the first team secondary against him. Even by the second team secondary. Overall today was just a big check mark for the secondary. Um, and Kevin, like you said, that there is something to that about there were some shorter passes, there were some shorter designed passes as well. But even those deeper passes where the quarterbacks had some time, they were looking a bit more intermediate. That just sort of wasn't there for them. But yeah, with Michael Penix, even though he had, I'd say today was maybe his worst day of the three. He still shows flashes even on days when he struggles, which is very promising because nobody has a great day every day.
Yeah, no, that's especially the case for rookies. It's just it it's gonna be up and down. If it wasn't, it would be weird. Now, obviously, if it's just all bad, that's not good either. We don't want that. That's certainly not the case. So definitely glad to see Penix. You want the quarterback to be challenged, right? You want to have a defense that's good enough that's going to challenge it, but you don't want it to be like so much that it's destroying his confidence. It sounds like it's a little bit of give and take. I think that's good. I think that's a good situation for him to be in. Um, I think looking at the rest of your notes here, I know you were very complimentary of Charlie Werner. We hadn't heard too much about him previously in camp. I know he's been sort of working with the first team, but just sort of a little bit of a quieter start. Um, so definitely glad to hear that. And then I know there's a lot of people have defensive line and safety depth chart questions. I think not much has changed there, but I know I think Jarvis Davis was saying D'Angelo Malone was getting a little bit of run today with like the 1-2 group. So I didn't know if you observed that as well, but that definitely found that interesting since we hadn't heard pretty much anything about D'Angelo Malone prior to today. So
Yeah, Malone was mostly just running with the threes and fours previously. The other person that was getting more run that I sort of made a note of right away was Damon Harris. And it was right away in the walkthrough, and I'm like, wait, Damon Harris is in at right defensive end with the first team rotation a little bit. And then it was interesting seeing him line up on the edge at outside linebacker as well within that same walkthrough. So, it was an interesting note to make. Now, of course, Grady Jarrett, I think, was on a bit of a snap count as well today. Like Grady Jarrett had a strong day as usual, as he always has. But you know, Raheem Morris, it's by design. He says some days he'll have 50% of snaps, some days he'll have 70% of snaps, working his way back from that torn ACL. Um, so, it was interesting. I saw some Kadavius Street running with that 1-2 sort of group as well. There was there's also a pretty interesting play. Um, it looks like they're getting a little bit creative. It was in walkthroughs. Obviously, I'm not allowed to tweet any alignment anymore. But Troy Anderson sort of lined up on the inside of Lorenzo Carter, who was the sort of outside pass rusher. There were also some other plays where you see the left or the right half of the defensive line like lining up with their hand in the dirt, and the entire left half of the defensive line all standing up like on their feet. So it looks like they're getting creative. Like I feel like we're going to see some creativity overall when it comes to that defensive line group, that edge group. The edge group isn't strong right now. I would say for the Falcons, like reality is reality. I haven't been very impressed by what I've seen from the edge guys so far. Raheem Morris and Coach Lake are definitely, I think, going to try to get a bit creative, dial up some blitzes. Um, you saw some Brandon Dorlus with the second team a little bit more as well. He's someone that was also on day one looked like he was running with those 3-4 guys, and now we see him getting his opportunity a little bit with some snaps. Um, so yeah, it looks like they're giving some of the young guys some opportunity as well.
yeah, I'm glad to hear that, and I think it's smart. Like you want your guys to rotate in. You want to see how different guys look against the higher level competition. I'm still very much a D'Angelo Malone fan. I think his ticket's probably going to have to be on special teams, right? I mean, he's probably going to have to prove himself there to try to make it as that last guy. But they've brought in so many guys at that outside linebacker and edge position. It's just like it's going to be a tough numbers game for him to crack it, especially with like James Smith Williams and Braylon Trice is ahead of him as well, the rookie. So it's like it's going to be tough for him to crack that rotation, especially considering all those guys, and you've already got Ebiketie and Lorenzo Carter that are in that group as well. So certainly hope that these young guys can prove themselves and at very least get an opportunity on the practice squad. But we'll see how that develops. Speaking of the defensive line, I know you mentioned that Dorlus and Ororo were both sort of working with the second team. I know that's kind of an upgrade for Dorless, who was mostly working with the 3-4 sort of group before. So that's a positive change, I believe, for Dorless.
Yeah,
It's good to see that.
I mean, he's not working like exclusively with the center, but
Yeah,
he's sort of rotating in a little bit. Which yeah,
baby
it,
steps. Yeah,
yeah, they're always pointing out like, it's
yeah,
still early. We're still in July technically. Um, but yeah, Rook also has been working with the twos from the very beginning.
yeah,
So yeah, we'll see. There's so many options with that interior defensive line, with that defensive line overall. There's going to be so much rotation. The other thing that I didn't mention in my notes, I mentioned it in a tweet, was David Onyemata was excellent. Like David Onyemata is a standout. He had a couple of really nice run stops. He and Grady Jarrett are going to make one of the best interior. They're going to be one of the best defensive tackle tandems in the NFL. I feel like Onyemata was such a steal in free agency last spring, and he sort of showcased that with his first season last year. And I think he'll be just as good this year, and that's going to be very very important because the Falcons can't really afford for Onyemata to regress given the regression that's going to happen at other on other parts of this defense.
yeah.
But yeah, so far my cues, no difference. Remaining the cornerback two, I think he will be the cornerback two. I saw um, Clark Phillips and Kevin King with the twos. I made a note of that with the second team in walkthroughs. Antonio Hamilton in that interior a little bit. So I feel like Hughes, as of right now, will go into the season as that CB2, but I don't feel like it'll be a very long leash on him if he does struggle. There are guys waiting in the wings, and Clark Phillips being chief among them. Richie Grant, there was some rotation, but right now, strong safety, I would say, will probably be Richie Grant's position. Uh, Based on what I've seen so far, there's still I will be back at camp 3 more days. Tomorrow, Friday for the Mercedes-Benz practice. I'm planning on going there, and then on that Monday before they depart for Miami. Monday's the last practice before they go to Miami for the joint practice. Then they have the preseason game, and as soon as we get to the preseason, my watch sort of ends.
Yes, yes, that's how we've typically done this, folks. Adnan is going above and beyond. 'Cause, yeah, I believe there's no Thursday practice. I think they're doing like two padded practices, then having a day off or something like that.
Yeah, two padded
Um,
practice, then Thursday's off.
yeah. So then we'll get the Ben's practice, and then we'll get one more from Adnan. So we got a few more to get to, guys.
They have
Yep.
nothing this weekend either. So
Yeah.
Saturday, Sunday, nothing at all.
Interesting.
Monday, I'm expecting a very, very quiet day
Yeah.
before they depart for Miami. Yeah, guys, I would love to be there, for all the other practices.
Miami.
I only have so many PTO days, guys. Like I'm already taking this is coming out of my vacation time.
Yeah. This well, Adnan's doing the Lord's work here for us. Trying to remember if there's anything else we need to get to, guys. Please like, subscribe, all that good stuff. While I look over the rest of the notes here, I know. Oh yeah, Jason McClellan. We should probably talk about him. He's finally healthy. He's been practicing this training camp, and it seems like he is sort of dominating the touches with the second group with Michael Penix. So it seems like
Well,
McClellan has kind of quickly taken over uh, the running back 3 role for this team.
yeah, he's taken over the role. I wouldn't say dominating, but he's
Mm,
leading. He's leading the
leading,
touches.
leading. Gotcha.
I think he got one more carry than Carlos Washington. It's still a competition for that RB3 role, but it's also very indicative to me of Jason McClellan's status that whenever they're running walkthroughs with the second team with Michael Penix, it's mostly Jason McClellan getting those snaps with him. So I don't know if the team's going to carry 4 running backs. But whether or not they do, I feel like McClellan is going to make this roster. He's had some nice runs too. Like he had some decent runs today. He had, I think, maybe the longest run out of any running back. Um, before the pads came on at the high school practice on Friday, on Saturday, sorry, Saturday night. Again, mixing up the days a little bit. Um, but yeah, so far, I would pencil McClellan in as that RB3. Um, and yeah, the other thing we finally got to see some kicks from Young Wei Koo. Went 4 for 6. Two of the misses were of the longer variety. One of them was affected by wind. Did have a 50 plus make as well. But the other, a couple of the other makes that he made that were shorter were kicks that sort of just squeezed in.
Yeah.
Um,
It sounds
but
like it
yeah,
was windy, so it's not the easiest conditions necessarily,
yeah,
but
it is early for young Wake as
I think
well.
this
But
is his first kicks really too, so chalk it up as the warm-up session, right?
yes,
Yeah.
yeah, exactly. And also they are giving Storm Norton some walkthrough reps. Sometimes at right tackle, sometimes at left tackle, just sort of keeping him loose and sort of just giving him that bit of chemistry, just in case he is needed. I mean, he likely will be needed at some point, just because swing tackles on every team are the odds-on favorites to get some snaps at some point. But yeah, right now, Hinton swing guard, Ryan Newsels, backup center, no change there. I don't know. I'm not expecting them to make any profound changes to the offensive line. I actually, given what I saw last year in the regular season, I'm not really against this being the offensive line, you know, complete offensive line because Hinton had some really nice, games last year. He had some really nice moments last season. We all know Storm Norton shit looked better than Caleb McGarry at some points, last year when he was taking over. So yeah, I don't know, but I feel like they may run with these 8 offensive linemen overall on the 53-man roster right now.
Yeah, no, I agree. And one of the guys that I was sort of projecting to make that roster as maybe the ninth guy if they kept an extra one, was Tyler Vrabel, who ended up retiring
Tired,
today.
yeah.
Yeah, which was shocking to me because he's not old. I mean, I think he's 24, so maybe he wants to coach, join his dad or something like that. But yeah, I mean, when he had to come in for a game at left tackle last year, I thought he did an admirable job. I was like, I think he's shown enough that you want, maybe bring him back. So that was kind of shocking to me that he did elect to retire. It kind of makes sense maybe that he had let the team know that he was considering that and was planning on it. So they were able to sign, Julian Davenport recently to maybe take his place there. It seems like Julian Davenport sort of quickly taken on a role, like possibly even with, the second, third team offensive lines pretty early in camp. Um, but yeah, so that was shocking to me. But it does seem like Storm Norton has kind of a stranglehold on that swing tackle spot, and for good reason. He played well in the couple of games that he had to play last year, and I know some fans were getting a little aggressive saying that he was better than McGarry. I Last year he was actually not. If you're comparing it to McGarry seasons from years ago, yes, maybe, possibly, but small sample size, that and whatever. Caleb McGarry last year, that was his best season so far. So, especially later in the year when he sort of solidified himself. But the Falcons, to their credit, they keep bringing in guys at tackle. They've like shuffled tackles in and out a bunch through training camp in this offseason. They added Jared Jones-Smith, who was one of the UFL's best offensive linemen. Like we said, they added Julian Davenport, who, again, not like a world beater offensive lineman, but certainly a guy with a lot of experience. They got Barry Wesley, who was an XFL standout. They've certainly continued to add guys to that group. So hopefully we'll
Yeah,
get a good rotation going.
and I mean, I feel like the best part of Terry Fontenot as a GM, like his best ability has been, those sort of scrap heap signings. I feel like it's a mean term to say scrap heap signing, but for lack of a better term, those very under the radar signings. And I mean, he's sort of compiling a laundry list of really good ones that he's made so far. I mean, of course, Cordero Patterson. was the poster child of this for a couple of years there. But yeah, you have Storm Norton, who you sort of got damn near for free. You have um, Michael Pruitt. You had John Smith. There's just a bunch of these guys. D. Alford, who he brought in from Canada, who has a home on this team now. So yeah, it's a really good ability, and it's really good for depth. It's something where you sort of get depth from some of the most unexpected places. And it's something where it's a huge plus. Now, I'm not saying Fontenot is a perfect general manager. I think, but that's a conversation for another day about his draft, his day two stuff. But one thing that he's really, really excelling at is signing some of those very under the radar guys where it's sort of just a small article from us, we cover it, and then nobody nationally really talks about it or cares.
Yeah. No, I mean, I think that's, again, Terry's background is pro personnel. It's not surprising that he's excelling in that area. I mean, I think the churn is something he's constantly doing. They're just sort of looking for those small. He's like, when you're playing Madden or you're playing, your dynasty leagues or your franchise mode, you're like, it's like every week you go look at the waiver wire to try to get those like depth guys that are just like 1 to 2 points higher than what you had. And if you do that consistently enough, it'll bump up your overall. Occasionally you'll get that like 1 point bump to your overall, and it just makes you feel great because you're like, oh wow, we're really making this team better. But will it make an on-field difference? Not always, but you want your depth to be as good as possible. And to Terry's credit, I think that he's always looking for those small improvements. And if they're not costing you anything against the cap, why not? Why not go out there and try to get better depth for your team? So, yeah, no, I'm impressed with it. I love all the guys they're bringing in. It's always exciting to see new faces. We saw two new wide receivers get added as well. With James Washington, who has certainly had some productive years in the NFL as like a rotational receiver. Also Jesse Matthews, who I guess was turning heads last year in training camp before and ending up missing the entire season with an injury. So again, they're not satisfied with the bottom of their receiver depth chart. They want to get different guys in here, and will they be able to make the roster? Maybe not, but if they can improve their practice squad, I mean that could end up being important over the course of a 17, probably 18 game season eventually, right? So you need to be able to find those contributors that can help you out in a pinch, and I think that's one of the things Terry does best is not being satisfied with the bottom of the roster and always trying to increase the level of competition, increase the quality of the depth, and props to him for that, certainly.
The the other thing from today, where it was the Arthur Blank press conference, where he, shout out to Mr. Blank. He sat, took those questions for a few minutes. This is where, the D-led thing that I mentioned earlier. I think Arthur Blank made a comment about, how some people, I guess, got mad in the media room last year that D-led kept asking the first question over and over again. And today, he's like, oh, so you made a remark about how D-led is asking the first question again. I think D-led at that point was said something like, well, I am in the Hall of Fame now. So yeah, that got a really nice laugh from the entire meeting room.
Yes.
Gotta love D-led. But yeah, Arthur Blank talked about, he was asked about some of the tampering stuff, talked about how it was just said we didn't cross our T's, didn't dot our I's, procedural things. um Mr. Blank mentioned the Michael Penix move. He said what was interesting. He said that during contract negotiations, um, Kirk Cousins was sort of informed that the team may go the route of taking a quarterback. Now, I don't think that Kirk Cousins thought that meant that they would take one in the first round. Um, but it does sort of conflict with some reports that Kirk Cousins was just completely and totally blindsided by it. I mean, who knows? Maybe he might have been, but you know, Arthur Blank didn't really elaborate. on that, other than he was sort of informed of the possibility during negotiations. And the other thing that I got from that press conference was that, Desmond Ritter and the quarterback room probably did some damage to the psyche of everyone involved, because uh, he kept bringing up life after Matt Ryan as, that justification for taking Penix, and basically saying how, in layman's terms, that this wasn't a quote. He never wants, what we got after Matt Ryan to sort of happen again. And he mentioned that 3 times, just
Yep.
talking about
Yep.
that succession plan, and just, after Matt Ryan, we don't want, to be a gap after, after Kirk Cousins. So that was kind of amusing to me a little bit.
Yeah, maybe some not so, subtle shade there getting thrown towards the previous quarterback rooms. I mean, Taylor Heineke's still here, so clearly they didn't think he was the
Shout
issue
out to Taylor
necessarily.
Heinicke.
But yeah, I mean, we were here getting some shade from the Cardinals beat as well on their recently acquired Falcons quarterback there. So maybe we're all just sort of coming to terms with that particularly difficult stretch of quarterback play in Atlanta, and hopefully this is the start of something much better. It certainly does look better, at least in training camp, than it ever did with these guys that we had previously. So definitely excited to see how these guys continue to grow over the rest of training camp and the preseason. Like Adnan said, we're going to be live again tomorrow. We will be joined by Daniel Flick. So obviously no live in-person show from the Flowery Branch broom closet this year. Next year, we're hoping to reunite for that specific show. But we're going to have Daniel on with us tomorrow for Falcoholic Live at the usual time. And we will be talking about day 6, another padded practice. Looking forward to that. And then there'll be some off. There'll be a day off, and then we'll be back, and then there'll be some more days off, and we'll get one final update from Adnan after that before we switch gears to preseason coverage. And once again, we will be having our not play-by-play preseason watch party show. Very much not play-by-play in any sense of the word. Wouldn't dare, consider doing something like that ever. That would never cross our mind. But we will be having a fun show for the first and second preseason games and so on. So
I just don't get why they can't let us do play-by-play. Like, we're not hurting anyone. It's just us. It's us and our like 200-300 viewers.
yep.
Like,
There laws, the laws out there, Adnan. We gotta, if we don't have the laws, we're just, what are we without
if
rules?
we don't have the laws, we'll actually be able to do a lot more stuff that we want to do.
I'm sorry, I thought this was America. I'm sorry.
Yeah, hey, we'll can't tweet play-by-play, can't record play-by-play. Season, like, you and I start recording play-by-play, we both notice some black vans showing up in front of our houses.
Yep, exactly. We gotta be really careful with that now. We're on the watch list, so we gotta be real careful. Hopefully, everyone watching us is already tuned out.
You and I are living on the watch list at this point. Like, there's no way we haven't been brought up in some conversations in some shape or form among, the front office or coaching staff, as in regard to, what the fuck are these guys doing?
these podcast bozos,
who let them in here?
Yeah, who let those guys in? But thanks so much for joining us, guys. We appreciate you joining us here on the Falcoholic Live for our Day 5 recap. Please like, subscribe if you haven't done so already. Please leave us that 5-star review on your podcast platform of choice. Those help us out as well. Leave a comment what you're looking to see from training camp. If you got training camp questions, you can leave those. If you got comments, other stuff, if you want to join up and help support the show on Patreon or in the YouTube channel memberships, you get some exclusive perks there, as well as access to the main attraction, I know, for everyone is the Falcoholic Fantasy Leagues. I believe we're going to be running 3 again based on my initial stuff. Like I said, I'm going to be making a post about the leagues getting started. We'll probably start forming those up in the next couple weeks and then get the drafts going before the end of the preseason, obviously. But excited for the season as we get closer and closer, right, guys? We are basically less than a week away or so from preseason now, and it'll be here before you know it. It moves fast at this time of year. So hopefully we'll be able to carry this positive energy and excitement through more than just like the first couple weeks of the season, because the last couple years has been pretty depressing after the season actually started, and we realized that oh wait, here we go again, same thing. So hopefully we can avoid that. But guys, thank you again so much for hanging out with us. He is Adnan Ikic at Say Which Way. Adnan, anything you'd like to plug for the people before we head out today?
Yeah, training camp news and notes. That's it goes up every day. Well, every day when there's a practice at camp. So the one today should go up very, very soon. There's gonna be another one tomorrow, and then one we'll see about Friday if that. I've yeah,
We'll see
I'll
if
write
it's
up
like
the
worth
Friday
it.
one on Saturday.
Yeah.
No, like I'll write up the Friday one on Saturday. I was thinking like, man, it's gonna be really late by the time I finish that, but I just realized there's no practice on Saturday, so it can go on Saturday.
Yeah.
But yeah,
Right on.
camp news and notes that has everything, that I see, that's big, that's important enough to where I sort of note it. And man, I'm not good. Just between us, like I came so close to just. I wrote down every play-by-play from 11 on 11s today. This is all my like phone notes, and I was contemplating just like sort of transcribing that into an article and being like, all right, well, if I can't tweet it, here it is. But
Take
I'm gonna
that.
refrain. I'm not. I'm gonna refrain.
Yeah, we have to protect you at all costs, Adnan. Okay, we can't afford to have you not there if I'm not there. So we got to protect Adnan at all costs. But yeah, appreciate the coverage, and of course check out those notes on the website as well. Give us those sweet clicks in as many places as you can. Thank you guys so much for that. And I'm Kevin Knight, of course, at Falcoholic. Kevin can catch my stuff on the Falcoholic as well, although mostly we're just talking about training camp here. So we'll be back, like I said, tomorrow night with Daniel Flick at 8 p.m., the usual time. We will see everyone then. Until next time, folks, enjoy your evening. We will see you for day 6 tomorrow at 8 p.m. Again, with friend of the show now, Daniel Flick. So until then, guys, have a great